Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Three Idiots Talk Aquariums podcast. Today, we're going to start off with something a little bit different. So, I was thinking, I think it would be quite good to have a little bit of a bit of an intro section. So, we're wanting to talk about like some of the what's in the news type stuff within the industry in New Zealand. Like what's different, what's new, what's interesting, all this kind of thing. Just because I think it'll be quite interesting for you guys, basically. Fishroom Cam was wanting to talk about something, so I'll pass it over to him and let him, go to town on his area of expertise. So yeah, away you go, Cam.
Cool. So this week, or maybe it was last week now, I can't remember. A whole bunch of tissue culture plants came in from Tropica, which is kind of cool. It's, to my understanding, the first time that has been brought into New Zealand, so that is a real positive thing. They've all been brought in above board and legitimately as well, which is also fantastic. People doing it have done it the correct ways, as opposed to trying to rort the system a little bit and do something in a backwards way. So it's a real positive thing. I think that means that we'll be able to get a few different species of plants that we haven't had before, or we haven't had for a very long time, back going, which is good because, like most things here, the variations of everything are a bit of a struggle to get hold of them. So if someone's bringing in some tissue culture stuff that's all above board and is allowing us to get a new ranges of plants, I think that's going to make a lot of people really happy.
Sorry. What are you doing, Cam? Did you shit
bloody
yourself?
A bloody fly just landed in my coffee. That's disgusting.
Don't worry about it.
Sorry, that stole my attention. But I was going to say, yeah. So that was if people are wondering where these tissue culture planters come from, it's what's it called? Aqua House down in Christchurch. Yeah. So I think it's really exciting. Because as people know, plants not really my thing, but I did buy one. And it's supposed to arrive today. So by the time people are listening to this, I will have recorded and released a bit of an unboxing video on them. But yeah, I reckon it's so exciting because, like, especially with like things like those, and I saw the Anubias in that. There's I don't remember what it was called, but like a rarer variety of Anubias. Yeah, mini coin. Like that's awesome. I would have bought one, except they were sold out by the time I looked at it. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones where I feel a bit weird saying it, but I would really encourage people to support them with this kind of thing. Like, if you're in the market for plants and you want tissue culture around, I definitely recommend supporting them if possible. Just because obviously the more you buy, the more they can bring in, the more plants is around for everybody. So yeah, that's kind of I guess I think it's really exciting, and I'll be really interested to see how it all plays out. What sort of different stuff we might get in all this, and how people might have different experiences with like getting them going and all this kind of little stuff. So yeah, I'm very excited.
It can only be a good thing for the industry as a general. Yeah.
And
I know you guys aren't really plant people, but yeah.
Plants aren't really my thing either, but I thought it was pretty cool that they looked like they were presented really well. Like I think sometimes it looked really professional, and it looked like something sort of next level for the plants and shit like that. Like rather than just them being a scungy old mashed up plant that has been mashed into a bag somewhere. It just looked nice. So, and I wanted to buy some of those Anubis too because they grow wild in my tanks, and I thought it'd be cool. But again, sold out. Too slow.
From a retailer's point, they work really well as well because they have sort of a 6 to 8 week shelf life, so you can plan what kind of stock you're requiring and leave them on the shelf or in a chilled environment and not have them deteriorate. Where sometimes you'll buy stems and stuff like that from other suppliers, and within 10 days. 11 days, you're beginning to go to muck and go gross and stuff like that. So it's a lot harder to plan what stock you need to be selling as well. So it's got quite a few advantages from the retail point of view as well, which is a bonus as well. And from all accounts, the size of the pots, what's in them, have been pretty good quantity of plants for the money that you're paying as well, which is nice.
It's probably a good way to do krips too, because then they don't melt, because you're not disturbing the root structure. You know, because as soon as you move those guys, they vanish, and you end up telling someone to grow the roots again. You know, so
look at you with all your plant knowledge popping off.
I used to do the krips. You know, wait until the plant thing. I got some gems for you guys. You know.
All right, I look forward to it. All right. Well, so yeah, if you guys don't have anything else to kind of say on that, I will I guess lead us off into the next thing. So the overall topic for the day today is going to be live bearers. So if you're unfamiliar, live bearers is like fish that when they give birth to like live fry instead of like laying eggs and then the eggs hatching. The babies come out and they're already proper fish. So examples of this kind of thing would be like guppies, platies, mollies, swordtails, all this type of thing. So yeah, I think they're sort of one of the more popular kind of I don't know what the word is, like genres of fish almost. So yeah, I think they're really good for like beginners to even like you get real serious people who just love guppies. So like they've got a great range in that respect. The only thing is it's not really my scene or Ryan's scene as much. So we'll see if I have any gems of information or if I'll be very basic. But that's all part of the fun. So yeah. I don't know if you wanted to kind of go next, Cam, and talk about perhaps maybe which ones you might see as the more popular ones around New Zealand, and which ones you might not kind of sell that many of, but maybe you think should sell more because they're cooler or whatever. Yeah.
Cool. So, like, first point is I feel very strongly that for the best part, livebearers aren't actually very good for beginners. They have their own. For the best part, they have their own skill set that they need to keep them thriving and going as well. And the majority of people, or a lot of people, will start with guppies and then question why the guppies are dying. It's because they're not being looked after. That's why I kind of don't think they're the best beginner fish. Countering that, of course, is I think platies are ridiculously good for beginner fish. So I think if we can push people away from guppies as their entry-level fish and push them towards platies, I think that's a far better option because they're hardier. Their care requirements are a lot more forgiving, and they're just as bright, just as colourful, and to be fair, they're a lot cheaper than guppies as well. So that's just sort of my first wee thoughts and points on livebearers. But as far as the topic goes, like I said, mollies, swordtails, platies, and guppies, and we've all got their own sort of care requirements. Often they need a slightly harder water and sometimes a bit more salty water than what people sort of give them credit for, and need a more of a green sort of based diet than your general tropical flake. But if you're serious about livebearers being description, most people keep them in their own sort of specialist tank of like your koi swordtails, for example, just keeping them by themselves and working through them, which I think are very underrated. Swordtail as well, to be fair.
Yeah, well, my first fish were guppies, so I'm a bit of an expert. I could probably say that I've got 25 years of experience in keeping guppies because I first got them like 25 years ago. So I'm probably more experienced than you guys in that regard.
What's changed in the guppy world in 25 years?
When I got them, you could pretty much just put them in anything.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter what you did; they just didn't die, and you always had babies. So these days, the guppies that we get aren't always the best quality. I think that livebearers should be a lot more popular and a lot better than what they are. I don't know why. I mean, you look on the internet and you see there's awesome fishes. There's fish like photos of like southern mollies and these beautiful black mollies and stuff like that. They get to a good size and they look awesome. But then you go in a pet shop and you see a tank full of half dead fish, and you're like, what's going on here? They don't look anything like the photo that was advertised, And again, I think that comes down to probably a number of factors. We're probably getting the crap ones from overseas to start with, and they're probably just, mollies, for example, should really be in brackish water, or at least really hard alkaline water, because that's what they kind of need. There probably are some out there that have been acclimatized and do really well in other water, but generally that's probably what they need and probably what they've bred in overseas and what they've lived in for many generations. So trying to just bung them into fresh water or the wrong water will just turn them over, I think. And guppies, I don't know what the answer is there. Again, I did breed guppies for a little while, but not on a serious scale. Only probably about 6 or 10 tanks or something of them. But what I found was you get a cool one from here and a cool one from there, and you'd stick them together and they both die. But if you kept the two strains separate, they'd be fine. So I don't know. There's lots of theories about different strains carrying different bacteria or different viruses that they're immune to, and if you put them together, they don't. New Zealand strain die and all that sort of stuff, But there are still some good ones out there, like my dairy man, my mate down the road that owns a dairy that found out I keep fish, always talks to me about his, and he's got them behind the counter, and they're basically living in what looks like milk, and they're thriving. There's just babies everywhere. There's a big massive 1 litre jar next to his tank that he puts all the babies in, and with no filter, no airstone, grows them up and then puts them back in the big tank, and they're still going hard. So I don't know what the answer is there. Platies, I think I've kept platies, but not seriously, and haven't seen a lot of really cool ones around. I know they're there, but they just don't seem to be that common.
Yeah, I reckon the problem with the kind of the I don't know what the word is, but the challenge with livebearers is I reckon getting them to settle is like the main problem, because I find once they've settled down and like gotten established and everything, they'll be as bulletproof as anything, but getting them to that point can be like real challenging. Like you said, sometimes you'll just wake up one day and half of them will have just like keeled over for no apparent reason. And I do agree. I think it really is a hard water problem, or like a low pH, hard water, all this kind of thing, or soft water rather. Especially for something like mollies, but I think in general, they just seem to do so much better. What I've even started to do is like when I get like little kids and stuff coming into the shop and like wanting a little guppy tank that's having problems, I just give them like a little coral rock or something. I'm like, just stick this down the back where you won't be able to see it. And it seems to, obviously that will increase the pH and the hardness and everything. And that seems to make a real difference in stuff just stops dying. So yeah, it is an interesting one. I don't really know what to make of it.
I'm also a big believer that the food that they're getting isn't helping them by any means as well. Often beginners aren't as keen on putting some extra money into decent quality food, and I'll go even further than that and say, like, I think livebearers go to that next level when they're fed frozens or live food on a regular basis. It really elevates their health and their longevity, and that's part of the problem with them as well. Like a mixture of the water requirements aren't quite being met, and then the feeding requirements aren't quite being met, and it'd be quite hard to do it. Like you want to keep them with tetras, for example, and guppies or mollies, and they're totally different spectrums on the water levels.
With the feeding, I'd be correct in saying, wouldn't I, that most of them, I'm not going to say all of them, but most of them would be more on the kind of eating algae and stuff side of things rather than eating like other fish or more meaty type things.
Yeah, if you go on a more spirulina based or an algae based flake or mini pellet or something along those lines, you'll get a lot more out of them than if you just go on a generic one or a more carnivorous type of food.
Yeah, because what I've done, because I've got a few guppies floating around in various display tanks and stuff, I started feeding them like the Repashy Soylent Green, which is like the it's what is it? It's like the algae grazing formula, and that seems to have made a difference as well, combined with the other things like in terms of the pH and hardness, kind of meddling with and all this kind of thing. So yeah, I would I'd say it's definitely worth looking into if you're wanting to keep them more sort of healthy and everything. I think it does make a big difference for sure. So yeah, and then the other one that this is more of a asking about, because like I'm gonna fully admit I have no idea what's going on, but leopard, those little leopard fish. What's going on with that? I have no idea what they are basically. So please educate me.
There's two species, the gambusia obviously, which are naughty, and then we've got the ones that are actually allowed. I've forgotten off the top of my head what they're actually called.
Yeah, because I was for the longest time I was under the impression that they were both not allowed, and then I was talking to someone the other day, and it turns out the other one, not the gambusia, the other one, is allowed, and so I was thinking I might get some in, but I don't know the first thing about care and stuff, and I was really struggling to find much information about them online and that.
They're quite hard to come by. Like there's people with them, but they are fairly hard to come by. I've only kept them once many years ago. Excuse me. I've only kept them once many years ago, and I didn't have much success for them. But I wasn't again giving them what they required for the best part. I was told that they produce smaller amounts of fry each time they have a spawning, unlike guppies, for example, which is why they're a bit harder to get hold of. But they're more tolerant of water conditions and temperature range and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So in terms, like they would, if you have slightly softer water, they would be more kind of okay with that than a molly, for example.
To my understanding, yeah, they're a bit more tolerant of more generic water conditionings.
Yeah, nice. I've kept them before, and they were pretty hardy and stuff. They didn't seem very overly prolific.
Yeah.
They didn't try and repopulate the world like a good healthy guppy will.
Yeah.
I guess it's important. I guess it's important if we are going to keep these that we need to know the difference between them and gambusia.
100%.
Because I mean, right or wrong, I mean gambusia are here and they're probably here to stay. Like they can't eradicate them. All my local ponds around here in Helensville are full of them. Like, the local kids go down with nets and catch them and have a great time and take them home, put them in various vessels and stuff like that. And so I mean, as a retailer, you guys have got to be especially careful because you don't want to be associated with anything illegal.
100%.
But as a hobbyist, we don't want to be accidentally spreading them either. Even though they're probably never going to be eradicated, we still don't want to be adding to the problem.
You don't want to be part of it at the very least.
Yeah. I mean, fines and all that sort of stuff, yes, it could happen, but the biggest thing is these things are bloody invasive, and they've taken over. If you look at the water around here and any of the streams and stuff, the whole surface of it is just moving. You can see little fish hitting the surface everywhere, and it's just them just gone mad. So
yeah, when I was at Butterfly Creek, I asked them if they knew what fish were rolling around their creeks, and they said, no, I don't know what they are. We've got no control of what's in the creek, sort of thing. which I thought was really interesting. I said, "Are they the gambusia?" She said, "Oh, I'm not sure what they are," and just walked away. So I'm assuming that's what they were as well.
Sounds like
the problem
food.
Is you can't get rid of them.
Yeah.
All it takes is two, half a centimeter fish hiding in the weeds somewhere. They'll grow up, they'll breed, and then you've got 100 more. So
I found it really interesting. They were living with the eels, so the eels obviously weren't picking them off either.
They probably do, but they probably breed
small.
so well.
Yeah,
they probably breed so well that they just replace themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, that's because that's one I've been thinking about only the past couple of days, and I thought you guys might have some more insight on the topic that I might not know about. So yeah, but no, that definitely food for thought. I think they do look like cool little fish just from pictures and videos and stuff that I've seen. So might have to give them a go.
Yeah, great colours on them.
According to Google, the males only get to about 3 centimeters.
Oh, nice.
So they could be a good option if you can get them going for the smaller tank,
Yeah.
So
and it might be a better option for kids as well, because you want to see the breeding, but you can get overrun by other things. So if they're a little bit slower to kind of swarm everything, that might be a bit more useful for that sort of application. But no, it's definitely interesting. So yeah, I guess going back to kind of the other things, we did lightly touch on it before, but I thought it might be good to go a bit more in depth with the kind of the brackish water question. So I know for something like mollies is the prime example. I don't think we know 100%, but I know we all have very strong suspicions that they're all bred and raised in at least brackish environments overseas before they're imported, and then coming to New Zealand and just getting shocked.
Do you want to explain what brackish water is, just for people that might not know?
That is a good point. So, like, brackish water is like, if you think about, in the wild, you think about like a freshwater stream or river, and then where that would meet the ocean. And so obviously the fresh water from the stream goes and then it meets the ocean, which is obviously full salt water. So in that middle bit, it's like essentially like half or like partial salt water. So there is some salt content, but not as much as the ocean. And obviously the closer you get to the full ocean, the more and more saltier it gets. So yeah, that's kind of like the exact salt content does vary, but that kind of middle range would be considered brackish. There is a lot of brackish fish that live there, and then there's plenty of stuff that kind of flicks between them, essentially. So yeah. Yeah, I don't know if what do you guys reckon about the whole, particularly for mollies, getting raised in salt water or brackish water, and kind of what might be the best ways to get around it for us as a industry in New Zealand, at least?
It's interesting. I was just Googling and it says that they are brackish water fish, but they can go freshwater. I just wonder if it's how we're doing it.
Yeah.
Like we really. I mean, obviously, we're all just throwing out our theories and our ideas. We don't actually know for sure, right? We haven't been overseas and seen what they're doing and all that sort of stuff. You guys obviously have a lot more experience in it because you've bought in these fish and then they've all dropped dead, and then you've tried something different and gone, okay, this has worked, so I can conclude this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's a combination of not very strong fish and also the wrong environment, at least to start with. you know. What do you guys?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I think the not very strong fish is a bit of a contentious point. I think they're probably quite okay when they're leaving the exporter, albeit growing in brackish water or salt water. And then when they get over to New Zealand, they're chucked in straight fresh water, which is enough of a shock to them begin to deteriorate them, make their immune system lower, make them not so healthy, and then they move onto a retailer shop which is full fresh, and that's when they're beginning to not enjoy life. I think if coming from brackish or salt, they then got into a more salted environment, they continue with their liver and kidneys will still be okay, and then if they can then move on to another salty type environment, then reproduce into a fresh water, then I think that's the way to move them forward. If you
the only thing I would say in that space is, because I know we all know that there is one importer in particular who does keep their tanks quite highly salted. I don't know exactly what. I don't know if you'd consider it brackish or what. I don't have that information. But I have found that, I mean, if anything, those ones are the worst livebearers in terms of survivability and quality. Even like as they arrive, like, you open the bag, like you look in the bags and they're already not looking the greatest. It's not like from that bag to the shop, to the freshwater tanks in the shop, and then after a few days, it's like you open the bag and they're not looking the happiest anyway. So I wonder if, it could be a separate issue, of course, I have no idea, but I wonder if it is, I'm not too sure, but I wonder if there is more going on there. Because it does seem to me, at least, like, it's like, obviously I have no way of looking, like, I don't have a microscope or an X-ray machine or whatever, but it does seem to me as though there is like trouble with the organs, just in the way that kind of their bodies seem to shut down sometimes. But it doesn't, even if it's arriving in, quote unquote brackish water, there's still those issues, kind of off the bat. So yeah, I mean, I'm not too sure really about that one. It's one that I think it's something we need to sort out as an industry rather than like for hobbyists to kind of figure out. Because there's no point selling a fish if it's like just getting sadder and sadder and sadder, and then selling it and it dies 2 weeks later in a hobbyist tank. That's obviously no good. But yeah, that's kind of just my thoughts on that sort of question, at least.
You'd think if the wholesaler, I mean, I'm not a wholesaler, I don't know the industry, if the wholesaler was keeping them in salted tanks and finding they were doing better in that environment, they would either acclimatise them to fresh water, knowing you guys are going to put them in fresh water, or just put a note in their lists or when you order it and say, hey, these fish, or put a little note on the order list, kept in brackish water, so okay, cool, these are going to need brackish conditions. I'm not going to order them in or sell them to a beginner, I
think that you are believing that there's some that care more than just making money, though.
That is the sad reality of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was because I mean,
once it's past them, it's gone. It's not their concern.
So yeah, I mean, there, like I said, there is one wholesaler who keeps all their tanks salted, and pulling back the curtain a bit, it took me too long to know that. Like, I didn't know until someone told me, like, not them, like a third party person told me that.
Was it me after I emailed them?
Yeah, it was you, but I was trying to give you some anonymity, but yeah. like after like it was like actually because I don't buy from them anymore because I was having too many quality issues, and it was after that. So it was like a long time after that I found out, and I was like, that's probably something people should know. In terms of like why are these fish harder to acclimate, all this kind of thing.
Yeah. Sure.
But you know, what are we? It's hard. There's not a lot we can do about that. Obviously, I just don't buy from them. But you know, a lot of people don't have that luxury.
It'd be like a car yard buying a car, and then for some reason, the seller didn't tell them that it ran on petrol when they put diesel on it and it blew up. You know, it would be something
exactly.
like that. You know what I mean? It'd be something like, oh, okay.
It's just a different thing, eh?
It doesn't even seem.
It limits the amount of live bearers that you can order if you're having to cut one of the suppliers out, because arguably they're the ones that had the biggest range, which is really cool, but the lower of the quality.
I don't think arguably I'd say they definitely have the biggest range by far.
Yeah, and then it minimizes what it is, but then you can work on the quality versus quantity argument quite simply for that as well.
Yeah, and the issue is that they wouldn't be bringing these fish in, and they wouldn't be selling these fish if they weren't selling.
Exactly.
So someone is
people
buying.
Love live bearers. Yeah, people love live bearers.
Someone's buying them, and it maybe they're just way better than you guys, you know, like, and they can keep them alive. So I mean, it wouldn't be hard to be better than an inbred in Nelson and some young guy in Auckland, you know, like. It's not that.
I've been to your house. I know where you live. It's a seamless delivery. You cannot call me an inbred anymore.
The bar's been set. The bar's been set pretty low, so you know. But that's. I mean, again, we don't want to turn this into a half-hour industry rant like we have in previous podcasts.
Pretty much every week.
But live bearers are
what we
definitely
bring
one of
to
those
the table.
ones. The problem with live bearers is they're cheap, and you know. If the wholesaler's selling them for $3, $4, $5, they've got to pay, you know, 5 cents each for them type thing overseas. As a guess, I'm guessing they'll be costing next to nothing to start with. You know,
I kind of do want to go back to that. Is I'm not convinced they are super cheap. All of them. Some of them are, but I'm going to say live bearers are. I'm going to say more middle range in terms of price. For like that kind of genre of fish, like the little smaller like community fish. So like, I don't know what you charge, Cam, but like for a fancier imported male guppy, I'd say around $15 would be where I'd be sitting for them.
Yeah.
So it's not like. You know, it's not like a $60 kind of better, but equally, it's not like a $5 like Ember Tetra. You know, it is that kind of next step up where it's like people do, I guess, have to, or a lot of people would think about spending $15 on fish, whereas like $5 on an Ember Tetra is not as big, and so obviously you get like the brighter colors and like the bigger tails and all this kind of thing. But it is one of those ones where it's like, if it's a lot harder to keep or whatever, or keep alive or keep happy, or like even just get to settle, it's, you know, that's it's not high enough where that becomes a major factor, if that makes sense. So it's kind of caught in the middle where it's like, someone will just pick up, but not enough where it's like someone will really, really think about buying it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's where platies are for the win, because they're cheaper, and you get everything else out of a live bearer. They're a really good entry level price, but they're bright, they're colourful, they're active, they're hardy. But yeah, I'm about the same price for imported guppies, around the $15 mark, and I think that takes into account obviously our purchase price and a bit of mortality, because they do take a little while to acclimatise and get used to it. But I've had, I don't know how many people question $15 for a guppy. That's ridiculous, like a $5 fish. And you're definitely getting what you pay for with the imports compared to the generally speaking, the locally bred mishmashed in a 30-litre tank type scenario, because they are brighter, they're bigger, they are more colourful, and they do have the bigger tail types in that sort of scenario with it. So it's definitely a catch.
I do get that a lot as well, like people complaining about the price of guppies. So what I did is I just get like all these like random assorted mutts essentially, and I just sell them for like $5. And like they're like, you get nice colorful ones or like big fat females and stuff, but they're not, anything crazy. They're just like very kind of simple ones, which is more for like most of the people who buy them is just like little kids who like get their money from mowing the lawns or whatever and want to get a new guppy. And so like that's one thing. And then I got like the fancier imported ones, which is more like people, the specific like guppy people, and people who are maybe a little bit more maybe kids where their parents are buying the tank or whatever. So I think it's good to have both levels, because I definitely don't think we want to have it as a bit of an elitist thing. Of course, we want everyone to be keeping whatever they want. But I think it's useful to have kind of the two sort of levels of them. And also I have found that these random little assorted color mutts, essentially, I found they're way more bulletproof than the imported ones. Like, pretty much you can shoot them and they will just cruise around like nothing ever happened. So yeah,
it's interesting. I've found them almost the opposite, which they tend to live up to the stereotypical guppy that just drop off for no reason. At least the ones that I've got. Maybe Ryan's about to say it's because I'm in Nelson and everything's inbred down here. But yeah, they tend to be a little bit less hardy than I've found the imported ones.
I have found that there is obviously a lot more deformed, or there can be a lot more crooked spines, particularly
the bendy ones, especially the females. The females get quite bendy. Maybe it's because they're bigger.
Yeah,
it's more defined,
and it's easier to see. But no, I would. That is the only kind of caution. So I mean, it's not fun, but whenever I do get a bunch in, I do have to pick through them and be careful that none of these deformed ones are making it to the sales tank, if you know what I mean. But once because like even that, so like obviously I do miss the odd one. I'm sure I have caught a couple, but they seem to live fine enough. They are just a bit crooked. So yeah, I haven't found them to be as kind of finicky. And even because there is,
they live fine. They're just not genetically good for breeding, and because guppies breed at such a prolific rate, that's
exactly.
It continues to pass on.
Exactly. That deformed spine and that. So yeah, those would get removed from the population pool, shall we say? But yeah, the other thing is, I just remembered what I wanted to say when you're talking about the mortality of the imported guppies is, I don't know if you've found this or not, but I found when I get guppies in, either they all die like very, very fast, like, same day kind of thing. Like they'll turn up with like, maybe half of them dead in the bag, and then they'll all just like keel over real fast. Or I'll get 100% survival, no problems. There's not really any in between. I don't get like the 10% die off or whatever. It's like either 100% die off or 0% die off. Obviously, it depends. Like on, it's not like every single order of guppies I'm getting, there's a couple bags of dead ones. Of course, I'm not saying that, but if I do get guppy die off, it's like 100%, and there's not really any visual signs of anything wrong. Like it's not like they're all turning up like covered in spots or funguses or anything like that. it's just like for no apparent reason they just are dead, and then once they start to go, I've tried so many different things, like different medications and treatments and stuff, and nothing has even remotely helped. So I don't know if you have a similar situation happen for you, but that's kind of just what I seem to encounter.
Yeah, it's quite common as well. I don't think we put anywhere enough emphasis on stress in fish, and I think that's a topic for a whole nother podcast altogether. Is
100%.
The stress that fish endure from traveling, bagging, scooping, boxing, going from one tank to another tank to another tank. Like I think that's something that we just downplay as an industry in general because it's really hard to prove. But I think that's a massive thing. But yeah, I pretty much find it's one or done pretty much with the guppies as well. And kind of thing is once they start falling off, it's really hard to stop them. And it's you're just kind of chasing your tail and hoping you might be left with a couple as opposed to the whole tank being cleared out on them.
It's hard to stop it because you don't actually know what's going on.
So, exactly.
And if it is stress or something internal that's going on with organs or whatever else, sometimes you just can't reverse it. It's just damage is already done.
What I think would be really interesting, and I have tried it a couple times, but like to get, I don't know, a vet or someone, I don't know even who, to like actually look at them and see if there's like, some sort of catastrophic organ failure going on. And I have tried, but the problem is they like once they start to go, they go too fast for me to get a vet appointment. To get any X-rays or gill scrapings or anything done.
I mean, we can send them down to Wellington for necropsy, but it's I think I paid $6.50 for 3 fish or something like that. And they said the fish.
And you didn't find out anything useful way.
Not really, no. There wasn't anything conclusive. And the fish that I sent, which were Africans and quite large, was more on the small side for them. So they would probably struggle to do an examination on a guppy, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you? I know you don't. I'm pretty sure you don't believe in stress coat and stress signs. Have you tried stress coat on incoming? I know a lot of export companies use stress sign or similar in their bags, and I'm aware that there's a lot of commercial breeders overseas that use it when shipping. And I know there's a really prominent African Cichlid breeder that uses it for shipping and part of his general day-to-day use for his fish.
I do, just for clarification, I don't believe in bottle bacteria. I believe in like this other stuff.
I wasn't sure where you landed on that.
I do, definitely. Because like, the only thing is, so I have tried it before, and I tried it for like a good while, like maybe 3 months, I'd say, and nothing happened, basically. It was just like no difference. But because the other thing is, I think, so in saying that, because my conclusion was something else was going on. But on the stress coat thing is, I think aloe vera is, because it's got aloe vera in it, off the top of my head, I think that's really good for the external problems, like the slime coat erosion and like injuries and stuff like that. So the only thing, because I've used it for, what did I use it for that time? Oh, I had an Oscar that got, it came into my care, like, and it had been just smashed by something. It might have been, someone might have put it with a flower horn, I think it was, and it was just like shredded. And I just used stress coat and a bit of salt, and then like, the next day, well, it's an exaggeration, but like, straight away I was like fine, happy as, all his scales grew back, all his slime coat came back to life. So I think it is useful, but specifically on the livebearers, I don't think it is the problem that is needing fixing. I'm not sure it does anything kind of aside from the external like slime coat and physical injury type of side of things. So But no, it is definitely something I want to look at.
It's a hard one to quantify too, because you and we go through this all the time. Someone has fish, someone adds something to fish tank, fish live, something that was added worked in their mind, but
there could be something else going on.
We don't actually know if what they added to the tank did anything. All we know is they added something and their fish lived. So without getting to it and actually doing trials and and having tanks that did exactly the same that didn't do it, like if you guys got some guppies and split them into two identical tanks, and then one you treated with salt and stress zyme, the other you didn't do anything, and one tank lived, the one tank didn't, then you'd be a little bit more conclusive than saying, oh, stress coat works, I added it and my fish didn't die. And
the
your
other
Oscar,
thing with
same thing.
The other thing with those kind of products though is I haven't looked at it super in depth, but there is some things where the aloe vera and stuff can have negative effects. So like for example, axolotls it's really bad for them. Like the odd bit here and there that probably isn't going to matter, but like long-term exposure is real bad. So I do wonder if there's other fish potentially that would be the same result, but in terms of like the medication type use. But I haven't looked at it, to be honest, so I can't guarantee. It is just like food for thought, I suppose.
Yeah, and the healing benefits of aloe vera in humans has been proven, and it's pretty good. Yeah, man, I don't know. I haven't actually researched that myself. I've just always thought it was a bit of a gimmick and never used it. But
it's because you're an old grumpy guy.
It could be. No, it's been around as long as I've been keeping fish. Actually, stress on.
Just proving Cam's point, grumpy guy.
It's been in all the
that's
tanks.
Older. That's longer than I've been alive. Just so you know, for context.
Hey, we've already scientifically proven that I'm the most experienced livebearer keeper here. So
Exactly.
So we haven't spoken much about swordtails yet. Of all livebearers.
So I'm gonna say, by far, in my experience, swordtails have been the least popular fish of the livebearer category, aside from like the leopard fish, the more uncommon stuff. But of the common ones, by far the least common thing I've encountered. So I do occasionally bring some in, and then they'll just sit there for like months and months on end before anyone buys them. So I don't keep them as much. The only thing I'll say was, well, I'm sure I'll say plenty, but the most important thing with swordtails is I reckon people keep them in too small tanks. I think swordtails get a lot bigger than the other ones. Oh, maybe mollies as well, but in terms of, see Ryan, the top thing I'm thinking is I think they get, I'm going to say too big for a 2-foot tank, really. Like you probably want a 3-foot tank in my opinion.
Not just too big, but I think they get a bit more boisterous and a bit more aggressive than what other livebearers do, which means they need a bit more space. Yeah,
for sure. And the other problem with them is, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they can crossbreed with the platies, which means that you get some real strange looking ones floating around sometimes.
It's a very common. It's a very common cross, But the problem with them is they get big, But they are cool, and they do have some cool color variations,
But those kois that you were talking about before, they're awesome.
I had some albino. I had some albino kois, and they were real cool, and they're real awesome fish. But
there are some
again, on your livebearer experience there.
That's I've got to pull what I got. There's not much, but I've got to pull what I've got. Like
still counts.
You got to work it. You got to work it.
There's some nice color variations about, but it's a very limited color, very much like mollies. Yellows, blacks, Dalmatians are kind of give or take it for mollies. and
Yep.
swordtails are similar: oranges, reds, kois, and then a few sort of variations of them. So the color limitations are quite strong with them.
We've got some
one
cool
where I don't think you
longfin
need.
ones, eh? The veil
Really?
tail ones, and stuff like that with the long fins for as well. Guppies do it as well. I've seen it on the guppies with
I haven't seen longfin swordtails.
I don't think I've seen. You get the hyphen swordtails, I think.
Yeah, that might be one.
But I don't think I've seen the
well.
long fins. Yeah. I'll have to
Yeah.
check it out.
Maybe I'm wrong.
But yeah, no, I'm interested. No, you're the what's it called, livebearer expert.
Yeah, no, they do exist. I'm not lying. It's all right. All right.
No, maybe we just don't get them in New Zealand, and I don't spend my days on livebearer forums, to be honest. So I might have missed it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they're cool fish. I did also ages ago. I got from a particular supplier. I'll tell you later, Cam. Is I got some massive, like huge green swordtails. Like they're probably like that big. I don't know. This is stupid. We're on a podcast. They were like 8 to 10 centimeters almost. Like they were massive, like absolute monsters. Then like they were green, so they're not the world's most colorful, but they were so fantastic. The only problem is they didn't sell, but they didn't sell for a very specific reason of people didn't know swordtails get that big. And they're like, oh my God, what's that? And I'm like, yeah, that's a swordtail. And they're like, no, that one there. I'm like, yeah, that's a swordtail. And they're like, oh my God, what would I even do with that? So yeah, I don't know if they're supposed to get that big or if that was like, juiced up ones on the roids, but who knows?
I've got a wee bugbear with green mollies and green swordtails because they're not green; they're more of a beigey, olivey color. I think that annoys me.
I would say they were green.
Could be a good fish to keep with your angels or something like that, instead of guppies.
Yeah.
If,
that's actually where I kept them. They were in the tank with the angels, and like they were obviously far too big to get eaten, and kind of just cruised around and got ignored, basically.
There's a guy down here who breeds swordtails in an outdoor pond all year round. It's heated, and they when he brings them in, they are as big as a pen. They're ginormous. And it's just because they've got the room to swim, they're outside, they're getting natural food, they're getting natural light. I don't think it's a genetic thing. It's just they've been given the opportunity to stretch.
I'm going to touch on something that's probably going to get me cancelled, but I think that's the same with a lot of them. Like, occasionally someone will bring in some massive mollies. Like mollies get way bigger than people give them credit for. Even guppies, like a couple of weeks ago, I got some huge female guppies that were like, I don't know, the size of your thumb probably, as a measure. It depends on how big your hand are. But
I think
they were humongous.
Guppy size, because there's some guppies that are genetically will never get big because of whatever lines are through them, and there's others that will. So I think that's a genetic thing. Whereas the swordtails and the mollies, they should be getting good sized fish.
I was talking to a guy a while ago, a month ago or so, about like he was saying about how in the 80s used to get like huge, like guppies used to be so big compared to like the little ones we get now. Even like at the top end, like where they max out growing, they used to be so much bigger. And obviously I can't speak to that, but I'm sure you old fellas will remember something like that. But yeah, it actually is. That's twice my lifetime ago.
Is it like when when your grandfather used to walk down the wharf and just put his hand in and pull out like a 2-meter snapper or something because they were that abundant,
That is ridiculous. But yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. Like, I think a lot of livebearers get bigger than people think. Aside from maybe the platies. Maybe the platies, people think they get the similar size to what they do get, but all the others I reckon get massive, relatively. But yeah,
that's fair. They do get quite large.
You what? Sorry.
Yeah, it's fair. They do get quite large.
Yeah. So if we're talking livebearers, there is one other thing that I think deserves to be touched on. That'll likely to get Big Cam fired up, and
Ooh, here we go.
Probably the other ones is so the topic of feeders.
Oh no, don't be like that.
If people are doing feeder fish, most likely it's going to either be like livebearers or kribs or convicts. Pretty much, those are kind of the ones to go for. And so I'm sure that the general topic of feeders will do an entire episode on. But just in terms of livebearers on the feeder side, what do you reckon?
I'm going to premise this and start with guppies are actually ridiculously bad feeder fish because they don't contain, they don't contain a particular protein, or they contain a really high level of a particular protein that ends up being really bad for the fish they're being fed to. Them and goldfish. So goldfish and guppies are really, really bad choices to use if you're going to use them as feeders.
And white clouds also.
There you go. Yeah. So,
just as a side note.
Yeah. So they're not good options. Overall, I don't believe that feeder fish are a good option, full stop. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yep. Yeah. I think I'm going to agree is like, I'm going to say like most of the time, like 9 out of 10 times, people using feeders in situations where you don't need to, which is obviously kind of separate. Yeah. But if you are going to be doing feeders, particularly with livebearers, I would say the most important thing is to breed them yourself, because they're so easy. But that way you can. I find with livebearers, they're very easy to kind of like almost gut load essentially, and like just fatten them way up before you feed them to ensure that there is more going on nutrition wise than just like a runty little worm or whatever. So yeah, that is the only thing I'd preface by saying, but it is definitely, I'm going to say they are probably the best option. Not guppies, but I'd say like, I don't know, something like mollies might be a good option if you're needing to. You can't do that on a podcast cam. No one's going to see it.
I guess the
He's got his fingers in his ear, in case you're wondering.
The consideration here is if you have a fish that needs to have live food to live or to exhibit its natural things, rather than, we're not saying breed the fish and then just feed it to your fish because you're like death and destruction or something like that,
the word psychopath.
Yeah. We're not saying just go and because the live food thing is a bit controversial, and just feeding fish to other fish, producing them to be eaten. We're not vegans anymore anyway. Cam isn't a vegan anymore, so But I've got another subject. I'm going to change the subject.
Good. I don't know how we got onto that horrible subject after having such a wholesome, lovely conversation about beautiful livebearers.
Yeah, that's why we can't have nice things, all right?
You just called livebearers nice things. I'm going to remind you of that.
My topic is cold water guppies. Now, there's a real special strain that I've seen in some shops of cold water guppies, like a whole new species of them. And they're in the cold water section next to the goldfish, and everyone's like, oh, these are special cold water guppies. They're different. They're not normal guppies. They're cold water guppies. What would you guys say? What's your thought? I have my own opinion, but what's your guys' opinion?
So I think primarily the number one thing is, I believe they are kind of believed to be an Endler cross, which I'm not sure if I believe. I kind of think that's cap. But, even aside from that, is guppies can live in room temperature water in the modern house. But the question is, should they? Just because it can live there doesn't mean it's optimum environment. Because the same can be said probably all the live bearers. Leopard fish aside, I think they would prefer it a bit cooler. But like mollies, guppies, platies, swordtails, whatever other thing I'm forgetting, they would be fine in a room temperature setup. But ideally, they'd probably want it mid to low 20s Celsius. So that's kind of the main question I have with them. And the other thing is like, what actually are these fish? So yeah.
Yeah, I think my opinion is they're just normal guppies basically, and
yeah,
all
exactly.
normal guppies, like you're saying, these days especially, not my house in Helensville because it's old, but most modern houses stay warm. Like they actually have some insulation or some sort of heating source so that you don't have to light a fire in your lounge. So they stay warm enough overnight that if you walk out and you're not wanting to put your jacket and your hoodie on and your beanie on, the guppies are probably going to be fine all year round without a heater. In my house, no, because the inside temperature is usually lower than the outside temperature. But
we were talking about it the other day. I mean, in a lot of real new houses, I'm going to say there's probably proper tropical fish that will be fine because they stay so warm. I'd still would.
You'd still chuck a heater in, right?
I wouldn't recommend it, but like, plenty of houses where it would stay like 20 degrees at the bare minimum, even in the dead of winter. But yeah, it is something to consider. I jumped on your tone there, Cam.
I think that the cold water guppies is a marketing thing to sell more fish.
100%.
I'm yet to see cold water guppies on any of the supply lists, or at least labelled as a cold water guppy. Some might say they can live in colder water, but not being labelled as a specific cold water guppy. So I would question then if they're being purchased from tropical supplier, lack of a better term, then going dumped into a cold water tank straight away, is that going to cause them issues in the instantaneous for acclimatization and totally different water conditions to start with?
From my understanding,
putting that aside, they can go cooler. 1, 2, 3, you go.
Okay, I was going to say, so I have asked around about this before. From my understanding, they come from a supplier that you and I don't have access to.
Okay, cool.
Because they are all the same. They're all exactly the same fish, like that little inlet type thing with like they got their big triangle shaped tail, and they got this little like kind of, you can see it on the camera here if you're watching on YouTube, but there's like these two lines on the edge of the tail that's like green, and then they look like kind of antlers almost on the body, but not quite. So from my understanding, they come from somewhere else that you and I can't buy from or don't buy from. It's one of apparently it's one of the goldfish places, but still, either way.
So in saying that, I was in shops in Auckland over the weekend, and they had what would be considered tropical fish in cold water sections with no heaters.
Yes, that is a different.
Which I'm sure we do have access to. So the same question is there: if they've come from tropical environments, then going into cold water environments, is that going to be shocking them in a negative way? Like going from brackish or salt water to fresh water straight away.
Those ones I know for sure do come from the same place that we get them from. So because I have asked around about this very topic.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me with it is temperature swing, eh? Like so the temperature might get to but we're going to be stereotypical here and say most people have a smaller tank, right? So it's going to be more susceptible to the environmental temperature. So if the temperature drops to like 18 degrees overnight, and then in a modern house, it's going to increase as well. So it could get, and if everyone goes out, leaves the house shut up for the day to work, and it gets to 26, 28 degrees during the day, these fish are going from 20 degrees to 26 degrees on a swing, based on their environment. If the tank was heated, the tank might be heated to 24. It might only go 24 to 28 degrees or 26 degrees. So it's less of a variation on the fish.
The flip of that is in the wild, that happens quite naturally.
Yeah, overnight, it does, but in a tropical environment, you go to Fiji or something, it's still hot overnight. It's still warm, and they've got larger bodies of water. Some of them live in small bodies of water, but they don't go real hot during the day and real cold during the night usually. You know,
I suppose it goes back to that thing of like, are we wanting to replicate ideal environments or environments that they can deal with? Because this is also going to get me cancelled, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the wild is not the best environment for a fish. So, you know,
that's it, you're cancelled.
Think on that one.
The other side to it is that most fish, I'm not going to say all, but most fish do better in cooler water than what they do in warmer water. Their lifespan is longer. There's less stress on the inside of them because they're not working as hard. So they do tend to survive better and go better in slightly cooler waters. So like we might be keeping our guppies and everything at 25, 26 degrees. Optimally, they'll do better at 21, 22 for longevity.
Google suggests 22 to 26 for guppies.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I do think that goes back to a whole thing of like a lot of people keep their tanks too warm in general, I think.
Yeah.
So that probably applies to everything, not just the live bearers. But I'd tend to agree as well.
And then there's people that argue the warmer you keep it, the less chance you have of getting parasites and ick and stuff like that as well, because there's that school of thought.
If your fish are healthy, they won't get that anyway.
In general, the warmer it is, the worse it is. The quicker things can go wrong for me. You get less oxygen. Anything, if you get bacteria or anything, it can breed faster. I think it can go toxic quicker. Obviously, there's things that need to be kept warm, like your discus and things like that, and that's fine. You know,
well, that's why you shouldn't keep discus. Stupid.
And clown loaches are another one. They need to be warmer.
Yeah,
they're cool. I'll allow it.
Absolutely exceptions. So
but that's off the topic of live bearers. So
it certainly is.
Are we live beared out? I mean, yet?
I am. I was live beared out half an hour ago. So
I was live beared out. It's 6 o'clock when we started.
How can an expert be out of it before we even start?
Oh well, you know, sometimes you can have too much of a good thing, you know. And I think I've had too many live bearers in my life.
Oh dear. Cool.
Okay, so we signing off now?
Yeah, I think we should.
You can go to town, big fella.
Cam Inbred, do you have any final any advice on the world and the realms of life bearers?
Ryan from the Field of Deliverance. I think key to them is just give them what they want. pH, hard water for the best part. Live food in the sense of like brine shrimp or frozen foods, and a green-based flake or a green-based pellet's going to go a really long way for keeping live bearers. Same with one male to 3 or 4 females to try and keep that stress level down. I think if you can do that, then you're halfway through the battle of the issues with live bearers.
Cool. And young dumb Cam, have you got anything to add?
I know I've been making jokes about how they're not my favorite thing, but like they are very fun fish to keep. You can get like basically any color you can think of. There's one that's that color. You know, they breed very fast, all this other good stuff. Approachable tank size for a beginner, all this kind of thing. So, I mean, I was making jokes, but I'm not serious. Definitely, if you're even semi-interested, they're well worth looking into. I think a lot of people would get a lot out of keeping them. They're good fun for fish keepers, young and old. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. If you want some, I know where to find some. So, hit me up.
Yeah, cool. And I guess following up from that, I've been into your store and I've seen those real cool, the ghostly white ones. They're pretty badass, you know. And I used to breed some real cool neon blue tuxedo ones, which are real cool too. So, you know, they are cool. They are cool ones if you can find healthy ones and get them in the
There
right
is some real awesome ones floating around. So, I mean, don't be discouraged, people. You know, think of a color, you'll find them eventually.
Yeah, just find some healthy ones and consider all the variables.
For sure.
So that's us. That's us signing off. Really, really exciting topic today. So on the topic of exciting topics, we're going to talk about catfish next week. So, we may even get some catfish keepers crawling out from underneath their driftwood, and they may listen, but probably not. They're probably just going to be really expensive. They're just going to sit in an expensive house somewhere and just be like a hermit and hide and do what catfish do. So,
hey man, I'm excited to talk about our feather fins and our synodontis and stuff. So,
yeah,
don't hate on them. It's just the Placo people that are creepy.
We'll pivot that into an African talk and not talk about all those hiding under rock expensive fish. So that's us signing off. So if anyone's still listening, make sure you like and subscribe. And Cam is still working on that merch that everyone's been hitting up about. So sweet as. See you all.
See ya.
See you later.